You're going on vacation. And you kind of have like a vacation, you meet somebody on vacation in the
Vacation
pool.
boo?
Yeah, you're vacation boo. You see somebody on the beach or something like that, and you link up, and then everything's all good because on vacation, bro. You're on vacation for 2 weeks, and then it starts to get to the second Friday, second Saturday, and you're just like, like, are we really exchanging numbers here? You're going back to, I don't know, you're going back to like night.
That's what I said on yourself.
You're going
You got
back
this close. You got this close. Good afternoon, beautiful people. This is another episode of Album Mode. We review a new album every single week. We look at the lyrics, the production, the overall aesthetic of the album, and how the album fits into the context of that artist's career. Everyone watching on YouTube, make sure you like this video, subscribe to us, and leave us a comment. Let us know how wrong we always are. My name is Adriel Smiley, a.k.a. AdrielSmiley.com, a.k.a. Adriel Smiley Official, a.k.a. The Godfather, and we're here with His Royal Highness, a.k.a. No Longer a Munch, a.k.a. The Bunny, King Grant.
What's happening, people? We're back. Album mode. This time, it's us. Lucy Dacus.
Mm-hmm.
And her latest album, Forever is a Feeling. First of all, I want to say probably one of the better album titles in a while.
Agreed.
Forever is a Feeling. Great alliteration.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll connect it at the very end when we're talking about the album cover. But it's very, I don't know, man. Like it's just, it has aura. The title has aura.
I think we're saying too many things have aura these days, but I do like the title of this project. This is her fourth album. Last one was in 2021. And this album is a little bit less, but her past work is a lot about her experiences growing up queer and Christian.
Mm-hmm.
You see a little less of that on this one, but of course, those themes still exist. 1/3 of the supergroup Boygenuius, formed in 2018, which also features singers Phoebe Bridgers and Julian Baker. Now, we did a review of the Boygenuius album called The Record. Not my favorite name for a project. And I want to read a bit from the description before I ask you to remember your score. It says, the record and whether they are a sum lesser than their parts, and if their background music style of production works.
I write the description, by the way.
No, I'm well aware. I'm well aware. But I think that really sums up what we felt about, their project. Do you remember the score that you gave it?
I think I gave it a 5. A 5 or a 4, but I think it was a 5.
You gave it a 5.5.
Okay.
I gave it a 6.
Wow.
Surprised that I gave it a higher score than you did.
Me too, to be honest. I feel like I'm usually, I don't know, sometimes on these albums I'm higher than you.
Well, this is singer-songwriter galore.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm interested because on any other project someone does singer-songwriter stuff, you got a problem with it. On this album, will it be better for you? We're going to find out. But I think why I mentioned that is because we've talked about, you liking certain parts of a project and not liking certain parts and kind of deciding, like, for example, we've done this with samples. Sometimes you like a sample and sometimes you don't like a sample, and trying to figure out which way it works. I think singer-songwriting is similar in that vein where most of the time you don't like it.
Yeah.
This whole album is that. So I'm interested to see where you go with this.
But I would say that I am Arlo Parks, I'm part of the vanguard for Arlo Parks.
Mm-hmm.
I've been a person that's championed her for ages. So
I've never heard anyone call Arlo Parks singer-songwriter music. So
it kind of is. Yeah, it is.
No, she's great lyrically.
Yeah.
But I still wouldn't call the actual production and sound that. If that's what you want to include in that, then we can for sure, because we're both huge fans of Arlo Parks.
Mm-hmm.
But I would never call their music singer-songwriter type of music. So maybe we're in the same spot. maybe this is just not your favorite genre. But I want to know what your thoughts were heading into this project, because this was something that kind of we've been hearing about coming for quite some time. And now that it's kind of finally here, what were your thoughts heading into it?
Yeah, I was really thinking about what her, Phoebe Bridgers, and what was the third person?
Julian Baker.
what they would do after combining into the supergroup that is Boygenuius. Mostly because Phoebe Bridgers was the biggest of the three. So she kind of like was the rising tide in that situation where the predominant amount of people that tune into that album or just that supergroup together were Phoebe Bridgers fans just off raw numbers.
Yeah.
Right. So when Lucy Dacus and Julian Baker actually get that extra look, I was curious. I'm like, okay, what are they going to do when they get the extra eyeballs? Right. So that's why I've been kind of clamoring for this album, because I'm curious. Okay, this is kind of like a grand reset. So I want to see what happens after people press the reset button, how that affects her career in particular.
Yeah, I think why it's interesting to me is because I personally don't think that any of the three of them are that big of artists. Phoebe Bridgers is obviously the biggest, but they're all kind of like lower mid-tier in terms of popularity as artists. So I always thought calling them a supergroup was
aggressive,
something on its own. But when you talk about how her career is going to change or improve going forward, Boygenuius has 3.7 monthly listeners on Spotify. Lucy Dacus just passed 3 million. So in a way, it's like the group is not that much bigger than her herself.
Yeah.
Phoebe is still bigger than the entire group and everyone else in the group. But all the members of the group, everyone is kind of like in that lower mid-tier to me. So I find it interesting that the way they're talked about, you would think that they're all number one hits, huge artists, but no one in this group is any of that.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to think of a cross-genre comparison. This would be like if like I was gonna say YB and Cordae, but if like Cordae and like Lil Durk,
not even. Lil
Durk
is bigger than all the people that were there.
Yeah, Lil Durk is a little bit too strong. So it'd be like Cordae. I don't know. I'm struggling for that. It's like Cordae. Hold on a second. Like, let me think of this. Cordae, and then you have who do we like? Like Boldy James and like Benny the Butcher, and you were like, "This is a super group." That's kind of it.
That's not a bad comparison. I don't think that's a bad one, but I think the difference in all of this is like, we wouldn't be calling them a supergroup is kind of what you're saying. Yeah. So it's kind of odd that we did this here. We stood on that square, called them a supergroup. And
they're officially known as a supergroup.
No, I know. I'm saying that officially that's what they were known as. Yeah. But it's like, how are we deciding what supergroup is? Because if that's the case, Jeremiah and Ty Dolla $ign is a supergroup. You know what I mean? So that's the one thing I thought was very interesting about them. And I thought maybe I'm the one who's unaware. Okay, maybe they're just bigger artists that I just haven't seen what they've accomplished. Now, I don't think that's the case. In the comments, let me know. But in this reset, like you called it, of Lucy Dacus with this new project, Forever is a Feeling, we kind of get to see what that looks like going forward. And I think we see kind of bits and parts of it in the actual music itself. I think in terms of how big this project is going to be and how big the album is, may not be that different from the past projects. But I think maybe the actual content has a little bit of a change to it. Now, I want to read something she said about the origins of the album. And as someone who loves love, this album is for me in a lot of ways. Falling in love, she says, falling out of love. You have to destroy things in order to create things. And I did destroy a really beautiful life. You can't actually capture forever. But I think we feel forever in moments. I don't know how much time I spent in forever, but I know I visited.
Wow.
Snaps for that. That was beautiful. That was beautiful. But I think that is a good place for us to start when we go into the lyrics. So what lyrics do you have to start discussing this project?
So I think that when it comes to this album, Forever is a Feeling overall, I'm getting a lot of longing vibes. A lot of longing where Lucy is just yearning for another person, whether or not they are actually attainable is one thing. But then there's also situations where the other person has like moved on
Mm-hmm.
and she is still like caught up on them. So this is on Big Deal, which is one of my favorite songs. This and Ankles. Ankles is probably my favorite song.
Interesting.
And I'll go over the reasons why I like Ankles so much later. But on Big Deal, yeah, on Big Deal, there's a couple of songs that have this like similar theme, but on Big Deal is like this is the pre-chorus. It's like, we both know that it would never work. You've got your girl, you're gonna marry her, and I'll be watching in a pinstripe suit, sincerely happy for the both of you. So what changes, if anything? Maybe everything can stay the same, but if we never talk about it again, there's something I want you to understand. You're a big deal. You're a big deal. You're a big deal. You're a big deal. I think that when Lucy is talking about other people on this album, there's always this like the person, like, we were together, it meant so much, and they're about to slip out of my grasp, or they have slipped out of my grasp and they're about to get married to somebody else. And she's dealing with the emotions of what that's like. So usually when we talk about breakups in music, it's literally like right after. Like, fuck you, or I can't believe you did this to me, or, you know, it was a situationship and they thought it was a relationship, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is more of like, everything was great, then we broke up, and then I'm seeing you move on, and I'm still here thinking about what it really meant to me. You know, it's a different type of emotion when it comes to the breakups or just general to like relationships. So I think that's really interesting, because most people, they focus on that very short period of time, mid breakup, the day after post breakup, or pre breakup, where I'm like, I'm about to leave this person. Very rarely are you like a year later, that person's still wistfully thinking about that relationship, which happens in real life, but it's just something that doesn't really get sung about. So I was like, really, I was pretty interested in that concept, to be honest.
Yeah, her romanticizing her past, I think she does a really good job of that. The way it doesn't feel kind of desperate.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's
true.
Because it can come off like that of like, this is so long ago, they moved on, like, why are you still talking about them? She really refrains from sounding desperate while still romanticizing about the past. So that, I think, is a strength in the actual songwriting itself. The song I thought that I wanted to highlight, first of all, because I like this whole album lyrically. Like, I really could have basically highlighted any song on this project. This whole podcast could just be
the lyrics,
a lyric breakdown. But I said to myself, which of these lyrics do I think really kind of represents what she's doing here on this project, and represents kind of the intricacy of what she's doing? And the one I liked is For Keeps, which technically has no chorus, which I think is pretty interesting.
For Keeps, I love this song.
And she has this part in verse 2 where she says, if the devil's in the details, then God is in the gap in your teeth. You are doing the Lord's work every time you smile at me. I don't believe in anything anymore except you and me supremacy, but I still miss you when I'm with you, because I know we're not playing for keeps. This is just like hardcore lover girl type stuff. And you know what I think is pretty funny about this? Because
the emotions.
I stop this.
Get Brent Faiyaz on the remix.
Brent Faiyaz, Lucy Dacus would be crazy.
But it's interesting because he does make music that is similar thematically. Maybe the tone is different.
The tone, and I think what makes this interesting is like, I don't want to say this in a wrong way, but it's almost like every romantic connection is the best thing ever.
Yeah.
No matter how it ended, no matter what it is. And I have friends like that. So it was really interesting to hear this perspective, because I'm not like that at all. Like, I feel like I can see something for what it was. It's like, this was great. This was just fun. You know, not everything has to be deep and longing and yearning, but that's what a lot of this album is. But For Keeps stood out to me because personally, I'm in a situation where it's great, you and me supremacy, but we're not playing for keeps.
Yeah.
And for anyone who's currently in the streets right now, you may be in one of those situations and you know exactly what I'm talking about, where it's going great. You and this person could be something, but you're just not playing for the long haul.
Yeah.
And that just really makes it sting a little bit extra. Because I think you talked about the part of the breakup she's referring to, and I talked before about people talking about the nuances of relationships, especially in the 2010s and 2020s.
Yep.
This is one of those where it's like, you know y'all can't be together, but y'all still doing all these partner type stuff, having all these feelings, and not in a toxic way. Because sometimes this can be almost a toxic song. You mentioned Brent Faiyaz.
Yeah.
This could be a toxic song where it's like, why are we playing house? We're not going to be together. This is like, oh my gosh, this is so great. Let's keep doing this until we can't.
Yeah. Man, I am really enthralled by that remix with Brent Faiyaz just to get a guy's perspective, or just like him to play a guy's perspective on this song. But yeah, I think that, you know, this is, first of all, extremely relatable in the 2020s. And I have been through a situation similar to this in my life. So
Allegedly.
So this is something that, you know, it struck a chord with me in that way. And I thought that the idea, we're just like, because I know we're not playing for keeps. I also think about, like, you know, you're going on vacation. And you kind of have like a vacation, you know, you meet somebody on vacation in the
vacation
pool.
boo?
Yeah, you're vacation, but you see somebody on the beach or something like that, and you know, you link up, and then, you know, everything's all good because on vacation, bro. You're on vacation for 2 weeks, and then, you know, it starts to get to the second Friday, second Saturday, and you're just like, you know, like, are we really exchanging numbers here? You're going back to, you know, you're going back to like night.
That's what I said on yourself.
You're going
You
back
got this
to,
close. You got this close.
let's say you're going back to, I don't know, you're going back to
Unnamed city.
undisclosed location.
But you know what's funny? I like that you mentioned that, because I've had a few of those, you know, boos in different area codes. But personally, I've never been on this type of time.
Oh, okay.
I'm like, I vibe with you. You're cool, but I am not coming back here anytime soon. There is no delusion here on my part. And I think we haven't used that word delusion talking about her lyrics.
Oh,
but there's an ounce of that in there.
Yeah.
But again, she makes it sound so nice that it's like, oh my, I'm with you, girl. Like, it must have been a vibe. So I think it's so interesting that, you know, it's almost sold us on the delusion of you being with that person who you met in the city for 4 days. But again, I just, from a personal standpoint, I love to see it, because this is how I guess I'm imagining the other person is when I'm in that situation. And I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna go home. Like, that's where I live. You know what I mean?
Legit Brent Faiyaz.
Like, not in a dickhead kind of way, but like that, those are just the facts. Like, that is actually where I'm going. So to see this side and see how kind of fantasized it is, it's refreshing.
Yeah, it is. Man, I came up with that Brent Faiyaz thing just as we were talking about, but I'm really seeing this parallel between, or not parallel, this duality between the two of them. Another song that I want to highlight. This is a fun song. I mean, we could keep diving into like all the emotion and, you know, how, you know, this kind of reminds me of like On Talk, which is this Talk and Ankles are like my two favorite songs.
Talk I like too.
Talk is it's because of the lyrics and the production, where the chorus, the electric guitar there in the chorus is cool, but in the chorus it's like, why can't we talk anymore? We used to talk for hours. Do I make you nervous or bored, or did I drink you to the last drop? Why was our best sex in hotels and our worst fights in their stairwells? I was by your side, eye to eye, when you thought you were living in a private hell. I didn't mean to start talking in the past tense. I guess I don't know I guess I don't know what I think till I start talking. So again, this is more situationship vibes, but it's more of like this kind of reminds me, I've been watching Sex and the City. This reminds me of Carrie and Mr. Big. This is a Mr. Big type of situation.
What season are you in right now?
I
So are you rewatching it, or are you talking about when you watched it?
When I watched it.
Okay.
I have very controversial takes on Sex and the City, by the way, and how I feel about Mr. Big. But like,
I don't think it's controversial. I think everyone agrees with you.
I think it's controversial because I've been talking to women about Mr. Big and why I like Mr. Big. And
you like Mr. Big?
Exactly.
I like Mr. Big too. Okay, we're on the same page. We're on the same page. All right, I see you.
But regardless, this guy, this is besides the point. But
this is their Mr. Big.
Yeah, but no, seriously, because there's like, why is our best sex in hotels and our worst fights in the stairwells? That's literally what happened in Sex and the City.
Yeah.
Right. So, and it's like, I was by your side eye to eye when you thought you were living in a private hell. This is it. Like, remember when Mr. Big was married and Carrie, like,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're on the same page. So I think that it's good. I think that the parallel with Sex and the City is really interesting. And I think that, that's my full like thoughts on this, is like the emotion and like that that longing. She's really, really good at attaining that, really good at describing it too. Right? Like, this is a good, it's a good vignette of like what it's like to be in that type of situation. So yeah, that's Talk is just like by far it's one of two of my two favorites. Ankles is another favorite, but I want to let you go before I come back to Ankles, because Ankles is kind of away from what the themes that we're talking about.
It's funny because I took Talk out of my lyrics. I knew you would talk about it. So I love that you actually did. That works perfectly, because this was one of my lyrics too. I would love to interview Lucy, because none of these feel healthy. This really feels like you're just fantasizing over anything that comes your way. And from seeing my friends have done that, I really am like kind of drawn into what she's feeling here. And I'm like, yeah, like you want like this love story by any means.
Yeah.
However you're going to get it, however you're going to have it. So, we're not at the end of the podcast yet, but for the next album, I want to see Lucy in a long-term, committed partnership where they both like each other and love each other. And I want to hear what that sounds like.
Me too.
Because this is very much of like reaching at straws. And I think, to be fair, I'm going to talk about this a bit on Forever Is a Feeling on verse 1 of that song. But these songs, I guess, hit me differently because I feel like I'm the one that she's talking to. Because I'm usually on the other side. I'm not the romanticizer.
Okay.
I'm on the other side. So to hear this, it's like, oh, I get it. That's why you're still watching my stories. I understand.
Wow.
On verse 1 of Forever Is a Feeling, she says, I crossed the line and you followed close behind. We were cherry red in your forest green 1993 Grand Cherokee. You know the scenic route. I need the shortcut and shut my mouth. Isn't that what love's about? Doing whatever to draw it out? This part was so, so cute to me. Just the idea of you're going on a drive and you just keep your mouth shut so the drive can last longer. I've had those for sure. I've definitely had those for sure. And sometimes I have it as a driver. I'm like, yeah, I totally know where I'm going. I totally know where I'm going.
I have no idea.
I'm just doing laps. Make the odd left turn here, right turn here.
Right.
It's like, yeah, it took me an hour and a half to drive you home. Oh my gosh, we've talked for so long. So I get that. And I think this also fits the kind of theme of the project, Forever Is a Feeling, saying, isn't that what love's about? Doing whatever to draw it out. That really kind of encapsulates what we talked about on all the songs we've done for lyrics so far, of like, love and this feeling of forever in the moment, something you want to draw out more than something that's here to stay. It's like, this is finite. I have to grab onto it, make sure it lasts as long as possible. So this is what I mean when I say I want the healthy relationship version of Lucy, because to me, that's not what love is, of like trying to draw it out. Love can be there to stay. It's there for a long time. It can be home. This is more like...
Yeah, trying to grip and make sure it doesn't run away.
So I think, again, that feeling, she does a great job of describing it here.
Yeah, so I would say this is out of everything that we're talking about, Ankles. I want to mention Ankles, and this is my last bit of lyrics. Ankles. Probably, I wrote this down. This is the most peaceful, freaky song I've ever heard in my entire life.
Okay.
It's like, it's a very regular type of coffee shop type of production. The guitars very light, drums are very simplistic, right? But then you're just like listen to it and you're just like, oh, whatever. It's like, yeah, it's a good song. And then I looked at the lyric sheet and I'm like, hold on a second. This is a pre-chorus. So bite me on the shoulder, pull my hair, and let me touch you where I want to. There, 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 there. Pull me by the ankles to the edge of the bed and take me like you do in your dreams. I'm not going to stop you. I'm not going to stop you this time, baby. I want you to show you what you mean. Then help me with the crossword in the mornings, and you're going to make me tea.
Period.
Whoa. Like, I was just not expecting that at all on this album compared to everything else that we just talked about. For her to be this, I mean, is that super explicit, right? Because we've seen much more explicit lyrics in music, but the imagery is extremely explicit. Like the imagery of what we're talking about is very much like, wow, I didn't know that she went there personally.
I think it kind of fits the project, actually. Like, at some point in all these situationships, you gotta have sex. So,
yeah, obviously.
Like, you don't have to, but that's part of the deal. So I think this kind of fits.
Yeah.
I want to read this thing she said in Days Magazine about ankles.
Okay.
Ankles is all about wanting something you can't have, particularly someone you can't have, and trying to figure out how to let off that steam so that it doesn't explode and blow up your life. And that phase where your mind is going crazy and you're imagining all these things, but you're restricting what you actually do and want. Trying to have self-control. It's much more sexy than I usually go for, but it's a fun little bop.
It's a fun little bop. I would consider it a little bit more than a bop, but it is a fun song. I like, even in verse 2 is like Agent of Chaos, Angel of Death, one of the three ancient fates, playing with your scissors again. I don't know if people know this, but Lucy Dacus, part of the LGBT community. So for even throwing out that little double entendre there is a fun one. So I'm just like, wow, considering everything else that is on the album, obviously we're all human.
Yeah.
Humans are sexual beings. I'm going to assume she probably has had sex once in her life. So I'm not
allegedly.
I'm not astonished by her having a song about sex. I think it's just because of everything else being so longing, and I wish you did this, and I wish I did that, and I'll be at your wedding, and be like, actually just pull me by the ankles to the edge of the bed. Like, it's a little bit much. But I loved it. I thought it was great. I thought it was a very fun song, and it's also one of those songs like kind of in disguise. Like I mentioned, the production is very, very simplistic, very regular indie rock type of production, nothing special, and it can kind of just wash past you.
Yeah.
You don't even notice that it's happening. And it's just because we're here reviewing it that I'm looking at the lyrics. I'm like, wait, what? Hold on a second. What are we talking about?
I like it, man. I think it really fits with the project. Like, because to me, this whole project, like, situationship almost sounds too casual because she clearly has deep feelings for all of these people. And a lot of the lyrics, people are kind of assuming it's about Julian Baker, who she had a relationship with, who's the third part of Boygenuius. So you add that like wrinkle in here of like, which of these are about Julian, which is not. So that's a part of this as well. But I think like in this song in particular, it still fits the theme because it's something that they shouldn't be doing, or you're trying to restrict yourself.
Yeah.
Like that is a definition of that kind of, either the person who you've met in undisclosed city for 5 days, or the situationship where it's not for the long term, but there's something here. So I think all of these feelings she has on this project kind of fit into this theme of Forever is a Feeling, where she says it, in her little excerpt before the project, but that I've been to forever. I've had that feeling, and it doesn't always last. So this part right here, I think is interesting because, again, Lucy, I'm with you. I've been here too. What if we don't touch? What if we only talk? I've said that before. We can know how that went.
Yeah.
So I totally understand where you're coming from. I want to talk about the production because you are clearly not a fan of singer-songwriter type of music. For anyone who's a fan of this podcast, you know that this is not Démar's home necessarily. But there are some moments on here that I'm curious to know how you feel, because to me, I think the production is, at some points, it helps with the songs. And then at some points, it's kind of just the background to the lyrics. Lost Time was one of those where I felt like it was kind of background to the lyrics.
Right.
Very stripped down, very singer-songwriter-esque. Halfway through at the end, there's like kind of like finally a bridge with a crash of guitars and a little bit of distortion. And I think to me, like that's an interesting way to end the project because it's kind of like not the most dynamic, but one of the most dynamic parts of the whole album to be like the last 45 seconds of the last song. So very interesting choice in terms of ending the album. But the one thing that's missing on here a lot of times is like an actual progression or crescendo. Like there are times when it's not as singer-songwriter-esque, but there's not as many times when it's kind of like leading into a big swell.
Right.
On this project, which I think I would have liked to hear more of.
Yeah, me too. I think that there are songs where I like the production. See, let me clarify.
Not Démar explaining himself.
Let me clarify for people real quick. Okay, so my issue with people who are singer-songwriters or just like make music that are really simplistic when we're talking about like indie rock and stuff like that, it's that there's not enough things happening. Like if you're gonna make it plain, like super simplistic, you got to be a godlike singer. You got to be Adele, right? And if you're not a good enough, if you're not, in a Beyonce, Adele, Ariana Grande type singer, right? And you're maybe like a B. You got to scale up the production because like, why exactly am I listening to the music? And then you're gonna be like, okay, the songwriting can be amazing, cool. Then I could still be in. But you can't give me
0 for 2.
You can't give me 0 for 3. You can't give me the songwriting's okay, the singing's all right, the production it's indie. Like, then why the fuck? Who cares? You know what I mean? And I think that a lot of indie rock, indie pop, indie music in general, they are relying on the emotionality of the music, but you have to be a strong songwriter to do that. That's what I'm talking about. Like, that's why I mentioned Arlo Parks, where I'm like, Arlo Parks, in her latest album, that came out like 2 years ago.
Yeah, there's
a little bit more production, like interesting things happening with the production, but her songwriting is A1.
Yes.
Right.
And album with Hall of Fame.
Genuinely, and I think that with Lucy Dacus is that when it comes to this album, there's actually some production flourishes that I can hang on to, which I already we talked about the songwriting. I think the songwriting is great. But a song like Limerence, okay, very lonely piano at the beginning, and then throughout the song, I'm getting these very subtle violin swells underneath it. That's what I'm saying. You don't have to give me. It doesn't need to be a filthy beat. He doesn't need to jump on the track, but you gotta give me something, bro. And that's what I'm saying. Limerence is one of those songs that I really like. I'm obviously partial to the piano, but I think that just in general, there's just more texture. And if you're gonna make it lonely, you gotta really accentuate the loneliness in the music. And I think that song in particular, with the subtlety of the violin and the sparseness of the keys, it creates a unique sound. Like there's something interesting actually happening to her music. So there is interesting parts, okay? There's interesting things happening. Limerence is probably one of the best examples.
I like that one. I think that one works. I like Big Deal.
Okay.
As well. This one feels like it has some stuff going on as well. The brush drums, I'm a fan of. The guitar pattern, I think, has some stickiness to it. There's some stuff on this project that I'm like, I think what this project is to me production wise is how do these songs live on their own? Like as a whole album, I think production wise, this album probably feels better, but on its own, in terms of like even the singles like Ankles and Talk and Limerence, is like, are any of these songs production wise on their own going to really stand out to someone?
Okay.
Yeah. How do you feel about that?
I think for the singles, I didn't even realize that those were the singles, and those are some of my favorite songs. I think Talk maybe is one of the one that and Limerence are the most the ones that stand out the most. Because Talk also has an electric guitar associated with I think I mentioned that earlier, where there's an electric guitar that is on the chorus, primarily the chorus. And just like the drumming is like, interesting. Like the drumming is like, it's more pronounced. It's like pushed
I wouldn't
up
say
in the mix.
interesting. It's just more pronounced.
Yeah, it's more
It's
pronounced.
actually there.
Yeah, it's more pronounced, which makes it interesting because there's other things. There's other songs where like the drumming is just
Well, that's
just
kind
the background.
That's kind of
whatever.
the point of like the low bar. You know, like the drum pattern on this is basically the most simple drum pattern when you first learn to play the drums.
Yeah.
You know,
But I'm saying,
so calling that interesting is like comparative to the album.
Yeah, comparative to the rest of the album, or comparative to the rest of this lane.
Yes,
really.
yes.
So like you can, there's people who are good songwriters that have more like punchier production where we're talking about Olivia Rodrigo, right? I would say not as good as a songwriter, still good. Not as good, but her production's way more way more
interesting.
Yeah, way more interesting. So at least on Talk, I was getting a little bit of like a little grunge, and a little bit of a little bit more punk, It just felt grittier than the rest of the music that is on this album.
When I heard the album in full, Talk made so much sense to me as being a single. I totally understood.
Yeah.
After hearing the rest of the project, I'm like, yeah, that was the obvious choice.
Yeah, even the looping vocals at the end, like there's just more things. I wish her music was more like this. That would be awesome.
Like, I want to hear more like Talk, and that's kind of why at the beginning why I rejected the idea of Arlo Parks being singer-songwriter. They have drums on basically every song.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not as much like the acoustic stripped down feel that this project is mostly. The songwriting, I think, strong as ever, which is part of the singer-songwriter part, but the actual sound. The last bit of production I have is Modi Jelani. This song is very interesting to me because it
is that how you pronounce that?
How are you pronouncing it?
I wasn't. So this is like, if you read a lot of books, there's just like words that you just know like the spelling and what it means,
but you've never said it.
You never said it, never heard it out loud, So that's one of those.
This is definitely one of those. But this song, I feel like the plucky guitar and light drumming definitely feels like the home of this album.
Yeah, that's true.
In a sense, there are moments where the beat kind of changes in terms of like sounds come out, sounds come back in. And to me, that's like their version of progression on this project.
Right.
They do that a few times on a few songs where, sound will come out, sound will come in, this instrument will come out, this instrument will come back in. And that kind of gives the song a little more dynamism than just being, one way all throughout.
Right.
And lastly, before we move on, I want to read something that she said about writing this song. I thought this was very, very interesting. I wrote it in the morning. I went to a museum, the Barnes Foundation in Philly, where there are a bunch of Modiglianis, and I started writing the song there. And then I went home and tested positive for COVID.
Wow.
So then I finished the song in my room, feeling really sorry for myself. Phoebe was on tour in Singapore, and I wanted to talk to her, but it just wasn't the right time. So I just wrote her the song because I was missing her. I like that. I like that. Very, very, very wholesome.
Yeah, extremely wholesome. Yeah, so I think that's my feelings on the production. I think that, there are songs that I do like that the songwriting is solid and the actual productions of it's kind of boring. Like Ankles. Ankles, I think the production's whatever. Nothing special. The songwriting is saving it for me though.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's a lot of the songs. So it's like you gotta give me one or the other. Give me one or the other, bro. Especially in this genre or this genre of indie. Just give me one or two. One of the two.
I think the part that kind of falls flat for me in terms of production, and it's funny, we can kind of even go back to last week talking about Men I Trust.
Yeah.
Is Men I Trust has this quality where you can like some of the songs without knowing the lyrics. Her kind of whisper singy style on here, the lyrics aren't always clear. Now, we read the lyrics for this podcast.
Right, yeah, that's true.
But the lyrics are not always clear in every single song. So I think when you talk about, you say, give me one or the other, it's like you're not even always getting the lyrics because you don't always know what she's saying. So that to me is where these fall flat, where it's like, hey, you're whispering, singing. I don't totally know what you're saying here. And the production is kind of flat. It's like, where are we going with this? It's
that's
like,
true.
I could look up the lyrics and get my heart broken. Like we do love the lyrics, but I think you're not giving us enough of both passively.
Yeah.
I think this is definitely one of the albums where it's more of an active listen to actually enjoy it. I think what this means for her career, I think this is actually a plus for her career because, from what I've seen of them actually promoting the album and the press is, she's getting a ton of looks and press for this project that may not be all because of Boygenuius, but is definitely, along the lines of being up from the Boygenuius time. And I think as well, like, to me, this album is better than the Boygenuius album.
Ooh, yeah.
Even though I didn't
agree.
love that project,
I agree.
this is better than that project.
It is.
So I think if you do a solo album that's better than the group album following the group, that's a win.
Yeah, you're up. You're definitely up. I think that for her career, it's great. I think that for that exact reason, I think if you get closer to somebody that's more famous than you, which Phoebe Bridgers is, but then the music that comes out after when everybody's watching you is like better than when it was when everybody was like, oh my God, I can't believe this is so amazing. It's great because then you kind of get like the people who are like, actually the good music is on the solo project. Like you have to listen to the Lucy. If you listen to the Lucy album after they become a super group, you actually know that she, it creates more discourse. You're like, oh, who's actually the better artist, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that this is great. I think that, I don't even see a downside, really. I just think that you drop good music when you're more famous. Fantastic.
Yeah, no, I think this definitely helps. And I think, too, the whole preamble I had at the beginning about the idea of a super group doesn't apply to them. Everyone else can treat them like they're the three biggest women to ever create music. Super group, super group, super group.
They're not A$AP Mob.
Like, when I think super, I think about that brief moment of time, and I'm sure most of y'all are too young to remember this time, but when people were talking about Madonna, Justin Timberlake, and Nelly Furtado being a group,
whoa,
that's a super group.
Yeah, that's a super group.
That's a super group to me. So, but I think that people are still going to call them that regardless. So it is a win.
How do you feel about the cover?
I like the cover a lot.
Yeah, me too. I love the cover.
Yeah, one of my favorite covers, I think, this year. I love the border as well. I think that that's really nice. The background, in terms of like she's in heaven in the sky somehow. In forever. That's what she is. She's in forever.
She's in forever.
And then like the name of the album being a tattoo on our chest.
Yeah, that's cool.
I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it's cool. It's framed. It kind of reminds me of the last dinner party when we reviewed it.
Yes,
like it's
a
the
little bit of that.
same framing and same like artistic approach where like it's like the thing is like a work of art itself. So I think that it's great. I like the clouds in the background too because it's kind of like there's like a darkness, but there's like a light that is just like is just within reach. So there's even that nice symbolism that is going on with the background. And again, the tattoo across the chest is kind of badass. So yeah, I think the cover is cool. Okay, now we're getting to the nitty gritty. Is there no skips?
I don't think so.
No,
I don't think so. I think it's a little too flat, production wise at certain points.
Yeah,
where there are songs that are not as dynamic that are still good, but there are some songs where it's whisper singy. The production is flat. It's like I don't need to strain my ears to try and like this song. Yeah. So not a no skips for me. What about you?
Yeah, I would say no for a similar reason where it can feel samey. Like if you're passively listening to it, it becomes flat, like you mentioned, and it becomes like much more engaging when you're like, actually, let me tune in to what she's actually saying. So it can it's like weird. Like if you listen to it for a long time passively, you'll just be like, oh, just go to the next one or go to the next one.
Yes.
But if you're like sitting down with it, you actually want to hear every song. So it's a no skips technically to me.
Technically, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Is it a vinyl cup though?
For the cover,
For
the cover, I might. I really like the cover. Especially, I think this is like the first time her face has been so prevalent on her cover of her album. So I like that a lot, but probably not. Like, I think this is the kind of indie singer-songwriter music that I feel like is why people don't like this genre. Because of the moments where it's so flat. It's like, what's even the point of this song? And for a vinyl, for me, like my vinyl collection has some classics in there. I could not see myself playing this vinyl, not even once.
Wow.
So yeah, just because to play it all the way through, it's like maybe I'll go right to talk, you know. But to play this vinyl all the way through, probably not gonna happen for me. What about you?
Yeah, I think it's not a vinyl cop. I think the artwork is enticing though. I feel like just to get it for the artwork, just to have it up somewhere, would be cool. But off the strength of the music, I don't think it reached it. Okay. The moment every single person has been waiting for since our Boygenius review.
Oh man.
Adriel, what are you giving Lucy Dacus's Forever is a Feeling?
Forever is a Feeling is a 6.5 for me. Good album.
Okay.
Good album. 6.5 is a good score on album mode. Okay.
Yeah.
But I do think that there's certain parts that are boring to me.
Okay.
And I think I like this album a lot more from reading the lyrics.
Yes, me too.
But I think that we're not reading the lyrics every listen to this album.
Mm-hmm.
You're not walking around with reading the lyrics or listening to it, playing in your bedroom, not reading the lyrics. So for me, if I have to read the lyrics to give this album its props, that loses some points for me. So 6.5. Interested to see what people are saying about this project, what people think this album actually is. But 6.5 for me.
Yeah, I think for me, Lucy Dacus's Forever is a Feeling. It's a 7, barely. 7.0. And I've given those before where I'm just like, it just got over the line for a 7. And I would say this barely scraped over the line for a 7. I think the songwriting is phenomenal, right? I think that songs like Talk, Limerence, Ankles, which Talk, Limerence, big deal as well.
Yeah.
The production is also matching it, right? Where I'm like getting a real full-fledged song. But there are songs like Ankles where I'm like, it's only the lyrics, you know? Like Ankles, I'm only getting the lyrics. For Keeps is another song that's like that, where I feel like I'm just getting the lyrics and the rest of the production just falls flat. And that's my biggest issue with this style of music is that they have not, I know indie is supposed to sound like it's indie, right? So it's going to be bare bones, but there's ways to accentuate that feeling of the acoustic. Like you can like do more breathy things with the production, elongate people's vocals, make them more ethereal. There's more things that can happen as they do happen on this album, but don't happen enough. And that's the reason why it's a 7, and it could be it would be like a 6.75, but we don't do 7.5. So I'm like, it's a barely just got over the line 7 to me.
It was a 7 for me. That was my original score.
Yeah.
And then once I realized how much you have to actually look up the lyrics to enjoy the lyrics, I was like, that's not a good thing. It's great that we can show people those lyrics on this podcast.
Yeah.
But I think the average listener is not going to be doing that. So it lost some points for that for me. I'm very interested to see what our listeners think. So please, of course, you can now comment on Spotify. So make sure you guys do that. Comment, let us know. Are we bugging? Is this an album a 12 out of 10? Are we totally tripping here?
You know what's funny? When we do review this style of music, it gets a ton of like feedback. I feel like these ones get like a lot of feedback. So I'm actually looking forward to the comments for this.
Yeah, I think people are pre-defending themselves a lot of the time.
Yeah, but remember when we did Last Dinner Party, we were like,
this is not as like
we're the head of the parade.
This is so different from Last Dinner Party.
It is definitely.
The albums you're like comparing this album to is
no, but I'm just saying like the style of music, right? We were more, well, actually even Last Dinner Party had a lot more shit.
Last Dinner Party is just a rock album, man. Like it's not even, like this is not like, this is Boygenuius, probably the other album we did that's like this project.
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, I'm interested to see what everyone says. Please let us know in the comments. Make sure you find us on the interwebs at Album Mode Pod on Twitter, Album Mode Pod on TikTok, Album Mode Pod on Instagram, and on YouTube at Album Mode. Like this video, leave us a comment, and of course, make sure you're subscribed. Post notifications on. Please and thank you. Until next time, know yourself, know your worth.
Later days.